What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Stokastic NHL Strategy Show, sponsored by PrizePicks. I am your host, the big dog, Josh Harris, introducing my co-host, my partner in crime for the past 3 seasons, Slim Cliffy. How are we doing today, Cliffy?
Not doing too bad. I would say my rear end handed to me last night. Didn't do so well. There were, New Jersey really did not look good at all. Nico Hischier not playing really kind of threw a wrench in things. But I, only got back like a quarter of my entries. Not really a great night, but that's just kind of how it goes. Certainly we do have great nights to talk about from people in our, at least one guy in our Discord, don't we?
Yeah. Quite a night for Nick PS. You saw them all on top of the leaderboard. He finished first and second in the $15. And he also won the qualifier, is $1,111 qualifier. He won the first seat to the NHL Live final. Congrats to him. Man, the winning lineup in the 15 was great. Was that the qualifier lineup?
Yeah, that's the qualifier lineup. Yeah. He took down a seat even with a 0 from Mackenzie Blackwood, which you got to feel good about that.
Yeah, and something in that lineup that you see a lot is another nice way to get different. You go 2 centers from the same team, they're on the same power play. It's a nice way to differentiate because as you see there, Matthews was very high owned, Tavares not very high owned. Great night for him. Congratulations to you. Save some for the rest of us, maybe. He was all over the top of the leaderboard, first and second in the 15, third and fourth in the 40, a bunch of others in the top 25. So congrats to you. That is a great, great night. And yeah, I also had too many Devils last night, too many Golden Knights. It's been one game for the Flyers, and wow, has John Tortorella imprinted on that team. Ivan Provorov with 10 block shots. John Tortorella, you can say what you want about him being intense and all that, and he has a very defensive-minded system, and he requires you to block shots. And man, oh man, did the Flyers block a lot of shots last night. So yeah, Devil.
Yeah. One thing I do want to mention about the Flyers and Tortorella being there, I think it was a good point made by Charlie O'Connor, who's a beat writer for them over at The Athletic, is Tortorella's good at getting the most that he can out of guys that might not necessarily be NHLers. You know what I mean? Certainly Morgan Frost was one of their top prospects, but hadn't shown much. He looked really, really good last night. The third and fourth lines actually looked decent for the Flyers, which is something they absolutely did not look like last year. So the other point that he raised is that it tends not to last super long. Like, can it last a full season? Can it last 3 or 4 seasons? is the other question. But that's not a question for us in DFS. They certainly did look pretty good last night. Or maybe the Devils are just not nearly as good as we thought they were. I guess one team that definitely isn't very good, and we knew they wouldn't be very good, is Arizona. Pittsburgh just ran absolutely wild over them. I don't know how this isn't a regular occurrence for Arizona. And, we talk about how you might be able to play Arizona 1. Nick Ritchie got a couple goals last night. He was on Arizona 2. There might be some nights we play the Arizona top line, but there's definitely going to be a lot of nights where we're stacking against them.
Oh, yeah. Even when Jacob Chikrin comes back, it doesn't matter. Like, you're just going to go full send. They took so many penalties. Pittsburgh did a lot of damage on the power play, but, man, they also dominated 5-on-5. You look at the numbers from that game. Arizona is just, they're obviously rebuilding. They're not really hiding the fact that they're tanking. They have about 6.7 million draft picks coming up in the next few seasons. So, there's going to be high ownership stacking against, but it is easily one of the best spots in NHL DFS to attack. And I see about 60 people in the chat so far. So if you're here and you haven't hit that thumbs up, please do that. It helps us out so much. We love giving you free content. Like and subscribe to videos. It not only helps us, it helps the whole channel, all the different sports, all the different shows that we give you for free. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. It helps us out a lot. So let's get into this 4-gamer. There's some interesting spots here tonight. Detroit is making their season debut against the Canadiens tonight. And how we talked about on the first slate of the season, the Canadiens look pretty good offensively, but they're going to have some issues on the blue line. So, there's that to think about. And they have actually 2 really good lines that we can use tonight. Winnipeg also making their season debut tonight, and I went to my safety deposit box before the show and brought out this thing. We have a proprietary algorithm. I just wanted to give you guys a preview of how much Cliffy and I and Jake spent, countless sleepless nights over the summer fine-tuning the Winnipeg flow chart. So we'll break it out when it's time to break down that game. Proprietary algorithm only at Stokastic.com. So let's get into that first game tonight. We have the Tampa Bay Lightning with a 3.6 total headed into Columbus. The Blue Jackets have a 2.8 total. Patrick Laine has a boo-boo on his elbow. He is going to be out for about a month. Elvis Merzlikins was questionable. He's going to be out again tonight. Daniil Tarasov is going to be the starting goalie for the Jackets. Vasilevsky is confirmed. Maybe he's concerned about the Blue Jackets. Of note, Tampa Bay beat writers, lines of practice, Steven Stamkos moving down to the second line center, Brendan Hagel moving up to the top line wing. With Tampa Bay, yeah, they move those guys around, but chances are you're going to see Stamkos, Point, and Kucherov together at some point, and you'll definitely see them together on the power play. Now, our ownership run hasn't updated since the line change, and I'm sure that will change some ownership here because Brendan Hagel is $3,400 cheaper than Stamkos, so that does change a lot on the pricing side. I still think you can go back to old Tampa 1 here, just power play stack it. But Columbus 1, very cheap, fully correlated. Ken Johnson in the lineup, not on DraftKings, which makes me a sad panda. But with a 2.8 total, it was a bit surprising to me. So they're expecting goals on both sides here. So I guess there's stuff to play on both sides.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning Columbus has a higher goal total tonight than Montreal does going into Detroit, than San Jose does at home to Carolina, though that might move given the injury news. We'll talk about that when we talk about the Sharks game. And only 0.1 goals behind the Rangers, even though they're on a back-to-back in Winnipeg. So I just looked at last year's games against Tampa Bay because, this Columbus team, it's largely the same team, just adding Johnny Gaudreau and subtracting Patrick Laine because of his injury. It's pretty much the same roster, right? Columbus did score 8 goals against them in 3 games, including a 5-goal game. Now, obviously, that means there's a 2-goal game and a 1-goal game. So that's kind of the downside of playing the Jackets. So I definitely want to start with the Tampa side here. It's notable that Brandon Hagel is jumping to the top line for Tampa Bay for a number of reasons. Obviously, because it pushes Steven Stamkos to the second line and kind of gives us two even strength lines to look at from a scoring perspective. The other reason is just how good Point and Kucherov are together. Over the last 3 years, without Stamkos on their line, which means anybody else that would have jumped up there over the years, your Alex Killorns, your Anthony Cirellis, what have you, they're still scoring 3.2 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Anything over 3 is pretty good. At about 3.5, you're starting to get into elite territory, but 3.2 over a fairly large sample with anybody that's not Steven Stamkos on that top line is really good. And Columbus, we kind of saw it in their first game of the season against Carolina. They don't look like they're going to be a very good defensive team. If you look at, expected goals against metrics last year, Columbus is near the bottom of the league in both 5-on-5 and on the penalty kill. And like I said, they really didn't change much about this lineup other than adding Johnny Gaudreau and Eric Goodbranson, who looked absolutely brutal in that first game for Columbus, but still finished second in ice time among their defensemen. That's something that's going to have to change for them, but we'll get to defensemen in a little bit. But this is a bad defensive Columbus team. And as you mentioned, with Daniil Tarasov starting, it's their AHL goalie in net. Now, Tarasov is a goalie the goalie of the future. But whether he's ready to play now against a team that's been to the Stanley Cup Finals 3 seasons in a row is a whole other ball game. So we don't have the ownership just yet with Brandon Hagel on the top line, but we do have ownership with Stamkos there. With Stamkos, it was about a 40% top 2 stack according to our top stacks here. Over on FanDuel, if you want to check out, or if you're playing over on FanDuel, still 37.5% with much lower ownership. I think Brandon Hagel is going to change that ownership and might actually even bring it up a little bit just because he is cheap. I believe over on DraftKings, he's 4K, and over on FanDuel, he's only 4,100. You're saving thousands of dollars off from Steven Stamkos, and obviously you're not getting the power play correlation. And as you mentioned, there are going to be shifts where even if Hagel, ostensibly stays on the top line the entire game, there will be some shifts where Steven Stamkos jumps up there. If it's anywhere near a close game, if they get out to a 5-0 lead, I don't think you'll see them do that very much. But if it's, 2-1 going into the third or something like that, you'll definitely see Stamkos jump up at times to the top line. And it's worth noting, they played a lot in their first game against the Rangers. I'm talking about Kucherov, Point, and Stamkos. I think they're all over 20 minutes. And I think, Kucherov was around like 23 minutes to 24 minutes, something like that. With Anthony Cirelli still injured, this team doesn't really look to be as deep in their second, third, and fourth lines as they have been in recent seasons. And I think, when they got down early to the Rangers, without the depth that they normally have, I think that's why you saw them play huge minutes. And I think you can probably bank on them playing 20 again. So I really do like that Tampa Bay top line here tonight, even if the ownership comes up with Hagel. I think you're fine to honestly just play Stamkos with Point and Kucherov, just because, like I mentioned, the Columbus penalty kill wasn't very good last year. I don't think it's going to be any better this year. AHL goalie in net. They are going to play some 5-on-5 shifts together. So, if you want to go with the savings with Hagel, that's fine. I wrote him up in the Power Plays article for that reason. And I do want to talk just a second about Brandon Hagel. He doesn't have a huge NHL sample, but he's pretty good going through the neutral zone, like getting into the offensive zone with control, which is something that helps teams generate more shots than simply dumping and chasing. And HockeyViz, which is a advanced stats website we use a little bit, they have him as 6% above average finishing ability, i.e. scoring goals, and 3% above average in setting, i.e. playmaking. So he can help do the things that generate points more than, just, being good through the neutral zone or good on the forecheck or something like that. So he's not a nothing up there, I don't think. So I think you're fine with either Hagel or Stamkos. Myself personally, I always like to go for the savings, so I'd probably go with Hagel. That way, you can even make it a full stack with Victor Hedman on the blue line with the savings if you want. But yeah, it is a really good matchup for the Tampa Bay top line. I want to mention Boone Jenner on the top line for Columbus is probably going to get this matchup. With Line A injured, they have Justin Danforth up on the top line. If you don't know who Justin Danforth is, don't feel bad about that. He spent most of his career in the East Coast, AHL, and overseas. He's on the top line, top power play with them. He was good in a fourth line role for Columbus last year, but there's a big difference between going out on the fourth line against fourth liners and going out on the top line against the Tampa Bay top trio. They are fairly cheap, so I don't really hate using that top line where they do have perfect correlation, especially where Tampa Bay was a heavily penalized team last year. Like, they did take a lot of penalties. If that's something that carries over to this year, Ryan McDonough's gone, Anthony Cirelli's injured. Those are a couple key penalty killers for them. I could see, the Columbus power play doing a little bit of damage here. So I don't really hate the Columbus top line here tonight, but they are coming in with a fair bit of ownership because they are so cheap. We have them 17, 18% ownership, which I think sounds reasonable to me on a short slate for a mid-price line that's going to play in all the offensive situations together. So I do prefer the Tampa top line, but it is a price thing. I would probably go with Hagel. The second line, I think, is where things get really interesting here. Jack Roslovic, Yegor Chinnikov, and Jakub Voracek, the second line for Columbus. But Chinnikov and Roslovic played about 80, 85 minutes together last year, got absolutely ran over, 4.5 expected goals against per 60 minutes. If you look at Voracek and Chinnikov, much bigger sample, up around 180 minutes, 2.5 expected goals against, only 43% of the expected goals share. Like, these guys have really struggled. Maybe things will be different this year, but now you're looking at a Tampa Bay second line with Steven Stamkos on it. Nick Paul, who's a pretty good two-way forward, played a lot of minutes for them in game one, I believe, or in the first game of the season, I believe. So it's not a very good matchup for that Columbus second line. It is a very good matchup for that Tampa second line. So, if you're worried about playing a top Tampa line that might be a little bit higher owned, Stamkos and Clone are both on the second power play unit. So you can full stack that second line, get 2/3 of the top power play, and go fairly cheap into what is a really, really good matchup going against that Columbus second line. So I do like both of the Tampa top lines tonight. I think I'd be, if I'm just even strength stacking, I would probably kind of gravitate towards the second line a little bit because I do like the savings and I do like Nick Paul being there. But either of the top lines, more than fine to use here tonight. Now, you mentioned Kent Johnson being recalled, not in the DK player pool. On the third line is a highly touted prospect. He does have a lot of upside. I'm just not sure he has a lot of upside until that role is solidified. But he has good line mates, right? You look at the third line, Kent Johnson, Cole Sillinger, Gustav Nyquist. Like, I thought Cole Sillinger was Columbus's best forward in the first game. He had a goal called back that would have been, on the highlight reels at the end of the season, just for being a shade offside. He played the full season as an 18-year-old, I think he was last year. He might have been 19. Played the full season for them, certainly improving. I think that's one of those spots where if you're on FanDuel, even if you're on DraftKings, you can use Sillinger and Nyquist as a little bit of a two-man, even though they're on different power play units. And I'm not really sure that third line for Tampa Bay is going to be incredibly strong with Vladislav Mestikov as the center. So I think my favorite spot, honestly, in Columbus is that third line. It's just a shame Kent Johnson's not on the power play. That Tampa Bay third line, they're perfectly correlated on the power play. They are cheap. Honestly, I think it's probably Ross Colton or nothing for me. I'm a big fan of Ross Colton. I think he could have a good season. He probably needs to move up the lineup for that to happen. But he is reasonably priced at $4,100 over on DraftKings, $4,600 over on FanDuel. I think he's one of those guys that maybe you can sneak in as your one-off if you're playing a 3-2-1 construction or something like that. So I do like the Tampa Bay second line here. Of course, I like the first line. Everybody's going to like the first line, but I do like the second line and their matchup here. Maybe a two-man from the Columbus third line, maybe some one-off Ross Colton. That's what I'm looking at with their forwards.
Yeah. At the Columbus top line ownership, I don't really want to play them, even though, Danforth is so cheap. Like, my favorite on the Columbus side is what you just mentioned, is that third line. I wish Kent Johnson was in the player pool. He's not. I think you can one-off Cole Sillinger here. Power play 3,400, 2.7% projected ownership on DraftKings right now. Like you said, Tampa Bay takes a bunch of penalties. Yeah, their penalty kill is probably pretty good with Vasilevsky and all that jazz, but for 3,400, I'm going to take some stabs there. Vladislav Nemestikov, not the best defensive center. He's more suited to be on the wing. He's getting older. He's a good player. Like, he's good. He's just not great anywhere. I think he suffers defensively with, 812-year-old Corey Perry on his wing. So I definitely think you could take some Columbus 3 stabs here to get a little bit different in your builds. For me, on the Tampa Bay side, I think I'm going to power play stack. I do like Hagel. I just wish he saw some power play minutes. He doesn't. But I think you go point Kucherov, Stamkos, point Kucherov, Killorn, Stamkos, Killorn, Kucherov, something like that. Mix and match, mix in Hedman. If I did have to full stack line, I think it would be that second line, just because the ownership, depending on ownership, Boone Jenner, decent defensively. Without line A, they might get a little bit better defensive numbers, but I don't know. I don't know how much better Danforth is defensively. What I do know is that Tampa second line, or the Columbus second line, is just brutal defensively. So from a 5-on-5 standpoint, with the same amount of guys on the top power play, I'll stack Tampa too. On to the blue line here. Obviously, if you're doing anything on the power play on either side, Werenski and Hedman are the obvious choices. Werenski's going to play like half the game. Hedman will as well. I think Sergachev's a fine play at 3,900. He'll see some ownership. Chernak at 2,900 will block some shots if he doesn't, break a bone first. But 2,900, I'll take some stabs there. Also on the Columbus side, I think either of the guys on the second pair, Gavrikov or Peak, are fine. They are coming up in price in the 4K range, which is kind of no man's land. But, if you need some about 20 minutes with some block shot potential, I think that is fine as well.
Yeah, Sergachev was a guy that I wrote up in the Power Plays article this morning. You can go check it out, Stokastic.com. Free to read, going over a few plays for this slate. Sergachev over on DraftKings just grades out flat out as one of the best values on the slate because of his price. Just 3,900 projected, or his median projections nearly 9 DK points. So that's really, really good for his price. Obviously, it's an ice time thing too, right? Like I mentioned, Ryan McDonough traded in the offseason. They have one guy injured, one guy suspended. Sergachev played 23 and a half minutes in their last game. I think that's probably going to be the range for him, 23 to 24 minutes a night, at least until their blue line starts to fill out with the guys that are missing a little bit more. So he's much more expensive over on FanDuel. So I think it's more of a question there, but Sergachev, certainly one of the better values on the blue line. I also wonder about Eric Goodbranson. Like, is he going to get hit by 3 pucks tonight and get us the DK bonus? Like, he played 21 minutes in their last game. He played the second most of any Columbus defenseman, more than Peak, more than Gavrikov, more than Bachfist. He was only behind Werenski. So, I think Goodbranson can kind of work as a punt, though I agree with you. I think Chernak probably makes a little bit more sense, especially with the offensive upside Tampa Bay has here. I also want to mention Zach Werenski grades out as just a tremendous value. Whether you're looking at DraftKings, whether you're looking on FanDuel, I'm just going to bring up our projections real quick here. Sorry. There we go. Zach Werenski, second in overall projections over on FanDuel tonight, but 2.4 expected value. You can see it's much better than Adam Fox at 1.9, Brent Burns at 2.14. Over on DK, kind of the same thing, 2.1 for his value. I believe it's the best of any of the expensive defensemen. So where Tampa Bay does take a lot of penalties, I think Werenski does make some sense. It looks like he might have some high ownership tonight. just because of all that value. But 15% ownership for a power play, one defenseman on a 4-game slate. I'm not going to sweat it. So don't mind him as an expensive guy, but certainly Sergachev at the top of the list for his price on DraftKings.
My friends, I see all of you in the chat, about 100 of you. Today is the last day for our $7 for 7 days of NHL Weekly. I can't tell you how good of a deal this is. This is your last day to use it. There are 2 ways that you can go about this. Click the link below in the description or use promo code POWERPLAY. What this gives you is pretty much access to all of our premium stuff, which is the projections that we showed you, the ownership projections, top stacks tools, which Cliffy shows from time to time because Cliffy is on the sticks, and our premium Discord, which is invaluable. We have great discussions in there. We always alert if there's lineup changes. We talk more in DFS. We talk, betting. Sometimes I go on wild tangents like I do on the show. It's a fun little community in there. It is the last day to take advantage of this 7 for 7 NHL Weekly. If you are on the fence about it, it's $1 a day. If you play more than $1 a day on DFS, you'd be doing yourself a disservice by not getting this. So, click the link in the description or use promo code POWERPLAY. So let's get to the next game of the night. We have 3 more games there, Avery. We have the Montreal Canadiens with a 2.8 total heading into Detroit. The Red Wings have a 3.4 total. Whoo, baby. No more Jeff Blashill on the Wings. They have a very fun top 6 here. They brought in Andrew Kopp. They brought in David Perron. They also brought in our boy Dominique Kubalik, but he's down on the 4th line. Maybe he makes his way up the lineup at points this season. I see a lot of ownership here on both Detroit lines. They're pretty evenly priced. Jacob Vrana is a fan favorite of ours. He is on the 2nd line with Kopp and Perron, which is a really nice looking line. The top line is still the same. Bertuzzi, Larkin, Raymond fully correlated on the power play. On the Montreal side, it's going to be little boy goals, Cole Caulfield with Suzuki and Anderson. That line looked pretty good in their opener. 2nd line of Bag of Bones, Sean Monahan with Kirby Dach and Mike Hoffman. Don't know how that line is going to be any good defensively. That 3rd line is interesting as well, Dvorak Gallagher. There is a lot to like on both sides here, and I think, and I say this not as a Montreal Canadiens fan, there is a lot to like on both sides here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I am a Montreal Canadiens fan. Go Habs, go. I mean, I know they're not going to be super good this year, but I just got to represent the team. In the Power Plays article I wrote today for Stokastic, again, free to read over at stokastic.com. Just go to our DFS page. Should be at or near the top. I brought up the impact of Tyler Bertuzzi. Now, Tyler Bertuzzi missed I think like 14 games last year because there used to be rules at the border for unvaccinated travelers, both going into Canada from the U.S. and going into the U.S. from Canada. He wasn't allowed in because he was unvaccinated. So he missed all those Canadian games. And if you look at what they've done over the years together, I mean, Tyler Bertuzzi and Dylan Larkin on the top line, Bertuzzi boosted the scoring and expected goals by anywhere from 10 to 15%. Like, it was fairly significant. Over the last 3 years, Detroit scores 26% more when Larkin's on the ice with Bertuzzi than when he's on the ice without Bertuzzi. So I think Bertuzzi is one of the more underrated players in the league. Like, he can kind of do it all, right? He can score goals. He's a pretty good playmaker. He's certainly a great disruptor down low, disrupting the defense and opening passing lanes and stuff like that. Lucas Raymond on the other side had a pretty good rookie season, looked to be a sniper. I just think this is a year where, Larkin's healthy, Bertuzzi's healthy, won't miss games. Raymond's a year older. Just looks like a great year for that Detroit top line. They are coming in with a lot of ownership. Our top stacks tool, which is part of that part of our wonderful array of tools here at Stokastic. I didn't mean to phrase it like that.
Our great tools are behind you.
Yeah. Remember, promo code PowerPlay to get access to our tools. We have Detroit's top line coming in as the third highest owned line, but it's not even that bad because we have them as 18% top 2 percentage. A little bit lower owned with a little bit lower top 2 stack over on FanDuel, but still, they're probably, Larkin's certainly probably going to play 19, 20 minutes, Bertuzzi around 18, Raymond a little bit less, but, they're a very good line. They were a very good line last year, and I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be a little bit better this year. And they're probably going to get a fair bit of that second line matchup against Christian Dvorak and Brendan Gallagher. Now, I think that line is good, but I'm not sure Juraj Slavkovsky is ready to, get top line competition in the NHL. He's 18 years old and it's a second NHL game. So I think Detroit 1 can do a little bit of damage here. Do like them. Detroit 2, I really do like the way that line looks. We have Andrew Copp, David Perron, and Jakub Vrana on the second line for Detroit. Now, Perron was brought in as a free agent. Copp was brought in as a free agent. Vrana was traded for a couple years ago, but he was hurt for most of last year. For people that don't really know them, Copp, a very good two-way center, can kind of do it all. As a second line center, he seems like the perfect, type of second line center. You can rely on him in defensive, offensive zones. Can score, can good transition, all those things. Jakub Vrana flat out is one of the best goal scorers in hockey. On a per 60 basis, I believe he's only second to Austin Matthews at 5-on-5 over the last 3 years, like on a per minute scoring basis. The problem is that he doesn't play a lot of minutes. And where he's going to be on the second power play unit, he might not play more than 15, 16 minutes here tonight. David Perron, I think, is kind of the crux for me here. I wrote in the Power Plays article on Stokastic in the section on Dylan Larkin of how good David Perron is on the power play. He was 90th percentile for expected goals for impact on the power play over the previous 3 seasons, and 95th percentile by actual goals impact. So not only did he help his teams generate a lot more quality shots, but they actually finished and scored a lot more goals when Perron was on the ice. And the one area that Detroit was pretty weak last year, I mean, there are a lot of areas, let's face it, but one area that's important to us for DFS was the power play. The top unit only scored 7.5 goals per 60 minutes. The comparisons I make in the Power Plays article was the Carolina top line, the Carolina top power play, the Carolina top power play and the Ottawa top power play closer to 10. So scoring, 1/3 more goals per minute than Detroit. If Perron can make this like a top 10 power play unit, that completely changes, not only his line, but his line's production, because, he could bring some more power play production and more fantasy points to that second line as a whole. But it would really, really help the top line with, the guys that he's skating with on that power play. So I think we could see Dylan Larkin's best season because of additional power play scoring. I think we could see Tyler Bertuzzi's season. So while I like Detroit 2 here tonight, I like just going to the Detroit top line and hoping Perron really makes a big difference. If you want to leave off, Bertuzzi and put on Perron instead, if you want to just 4-man or 5-man or full stack the power play, I think that's fine. Montreal didn't have a good penalty kill last year. I don't think they'll be a lot better this year. They're missing, they have 4 guys that have under 15 total NHL regular season games of experience. So you can only expect so much from them. I know they look good against Toronto in their first game, but Montreal always gets up at home for games against Toronto. Not sure about games on the road on Friday nights in Detroit. So I do like Detroit 1 a lot here tonight for their perfect correlation and reasonable price. On the other side, Montreal's not really carrying a lot of ownership right now. And I do kind of like that Doc Monahan Hoffman line. They look good in the first game. I thought Kirby Doc looked great. He was making a lot of plays along the boards, deep in the defensive zone, keeping the puck alive, trying to find teammates for shots, which is his game, right? He's not a goal scorer. He's more of a facilitator, playmaker, big body type down low, get the puck to his wingers. So A two-man of Hoffman and Monahan, I think is perfectly fine here, especially on DraftKings where Monahan's only 2,900. He's 2,900, second line, top power play, played 18 minutes in the first game. You don't get a lot of forwards playing 18 minutes a night for 2,900 on DK. So if I'm going to the depth from Montreal, I'm probably doing like a two-man of Hoffman, Monahan, maybe Doc and Monahan or something like that. But I think Doc would be the one guy I would leave off that stack because I don't know he has huge upside because he's not really a big goal scorer. But I do like Hoffman and Monahan, reasonably owned, but shouldn't be excessive. Of course, the top line definitely in play, especially going up against Ben Sherratt. Ben Sherratt now in Detroit, a little bit of an overrated defenseman. I think Montreal can kind of skate around him a little bit. Don't mind the top line, but I think I'll be looking for savings with Monahan, Hoffman, Doc, and certainly on the Detroit line. I love their top line here tonight. They're one of my favorite stacks on the night.
Yeah, I agree. I also do really like Montreal one tonight. Their ownership is in check here. It's not like, Detroit has a new coach and they have a nice middle six or top six now, but like they were really bad defensively at times last year. Better than expected. I went and looked at their defense numbers like, oh, wow, they're actually weren't awful, but like this top line is very good. They're fully correlated. I do like Montreal one. I wish like last year when Pia Suter was on Detroit 2, they always came in with way lower ownership than Detroit 1. Detroit 2 is a little bit over-owned for me. With ownership being equal, I'd take the extra 3% on Detroit 1 and just go with Detroit 1. You want a power play stack? I think that's perfectly fine. Dave Perron going to help that power play big time. I think you can one-off Perron too if you want. If you're looking for a little wings exposure and you can't get to that top line, I think Perron's a fine one-off. He does shoot the puck a fair bit. Moving to the blue line here, I'm not sure there's much on the Montreal side. Chris Weidman's min price running the top power play again. The Crash Bandicoot Abudabaga, or whatever that guy says, is on the second pair with him. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he's not a real person. No. Avery says he's not a real person. I kind of agree. That last name is ridiculous, but that's just his common username. That's his username. Okay. But he did play, I think, almost 20 minutes. So I think either of those guys are fine. David Savard, I wish was cheaper. Jordan Harris is min price. Brother from a different mother. He put up a big DK score in his last game. Like, these guys are really cheap. You can take a stab on them. On the Detroit side, Maurice Cedar, if you're power play stacking. Don't mind Hronik at 3,700. Wish he was a little bit cheaper. Oli Mata is always a favorite of mine, but he's, $3K. I guess it's fine, but I'd rather just find the 700 for Hronik. And Ben Sherratt, too expensive for me.
Yeah, that Ben Sherratt price over on DK feels pretty excessive to me. He's much more palatable over on FanDuel, just 4,200, only $100 more than Jordan Harris, where Harris is like half the price of Sherratt on DraftKings. Like, there are some pretty wild differences in the defense prices between the two sites. I do like Maurice Cedar a lot here tonight. I wrote up in the Power Plays article, he was only one of 3 defensemen in the NHL last year with at least 180 shots and 160 blocks. The other two were Jacob Trouba and Alex Pietrangelo, who are 2 defensemen we target for peripherals, right? So we're at least on DraftKings. I like Cedar's price a lot. Expect a fair bit of ownership because of that price. I think people are going to gravitate towards him because he is fairly cheap. But I think the Montreal defenseman I would go to is Caden Gooley. He is a guy that, he's a guy that they think fairly highly of. Played 22 minutes or something like that, 22 minutes in their last game. He's going to be on the top pair. Definitely has an opportunity to reach the block bonus. So I like Gooley on DraftKings.
Yeah, the one thing I say, right before we came on the show, Cliffy and I recorded a video about how to play NHL DFS, and we talked about 3-2-1 lineups. I think if you want to fade Detroit 1, I think a 2-man of Perron Cedar makes for a nice play as well. So check out that video that's coming out today. I just wanted to plug that a little bit. But yeah, I think a Perron Cedar 2-man is a nice way to get some Detroit exposure tonight. And we got some prize picks. This show is sponsored by Prize Picks. there is no Sharks. You're not going to see Jake Harry and his muscular quads on Prize Picks competing with you. You can play with him. You can run the same, picks as him, but he won't take your money. No Sharks, no optimizers or mass entries. You can go up to 5 players in your lineup. That will 10x your entry fee. You can go cross sports here. You can load in some NFL stuff with MMA or hockey, baseball, basketball, whatever you want to do. There's a link in the description below that will get you 1 free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum and up to $100 deposit match bonus when you sign up and make a deposit with Prize Picks. I forgot to make some picks yesterday, but the 2 that I really like today are overs again, over on Brent Burns and over on Dylan Larkin. I like both of those really nice today. Also, if you're betting, you saw I tweeted about it. For some reason, the biggest house on Narrative Street, Brent Burns, which we'll get to later, they're lining him with a 2.5 shot on goal prop on most sports books at plus money. We were hammering that in the premium Discord today, so check that out. So let's move to the second half of our 4-game slate. We have the New York Rangers with a 2.9 total heading into Winnipeg. The Winnipeg Jets and their secret flow chart have a 3.1 total. Rangers are on a back-to-back. It's the first of the season. I don't worry about it too much from a skater standpoint. Where I do worry about it is that Igor Shesterkin most likely be on the bench tonight, getting a rest. Yaroslav Halak most likely be in net tonight. Now, I have no stats to back this up, but when Alexander Georgiev was in net last year instead of Igor Shesterkin, some of the defensemen played a little less aggressive, and I think it kind of backfired a little bit. Like you saw Adam Fox didn't pinch as much, Jacob Trouba didn't pinch as much because they know that, as good as Georgiev may end up being, he is not Igor Shesterkin. Igor Shesterkin had one of the best goalie seasons in NHL history last year. Yaroslav Halak is good, was good. We'll find that out. He generally has been a very good backup. He is no Igor Shesterkin. Now, the top line for Winnipeg is Nikolai Ehlers, Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor. I had to do a lot of Cliff and I didn't sleep last night. We were fine-tuning the flow chart because Blake Wheeler is now on the second power play unit, which is just peak nitrous. Like that gets my gears going. He is not on the top line. His dusty ass is not going to be, having bad defensive numbers. That top line is offensive minded. The Rangers aren't the best defensively. They don't have Igor in net. I would be shocked if Igor goes back-to-back tonight. So the problem is heavy ownership on Winnipeg here. Rangers on a back-to-back, they have some ownership, and historically in the past few seasons, Winnipeg has struggled on the penalty kill. Rangers do have a very good power play. So I think, some power play stuff on the Rangers does make some sense tonight, but I'm interested in what you think you're going to be doing with the Winnipeg top line.
Yeah, I just want to mention real quick that our top stacks was just reran with Brandon Hagel on the top line for Tampa Bay, and it changed things quite a bit. Winnipeg now far and away our expected highest ownership line, up to 30%, with no other line on this slate expected to be above 21%. So I think that's kind of what we expected was that with that price coming down, you can now fit them in with other high price lines, this Winnipeg top line being one of them. I wrote about Ehlers again in the power play article over at Stokastic.com. And a couple things. One, he landed almost 4 shots per game last year, which is just an absolutely insane number.
Not on the power play either.
Yeah, that's the thing. And that's without top power play minutes. The other part related to the power play is from 2018 to 2020 or 2019 to 2022 to the end of last season. He only got 17% of his points from the power play. If you look at elite top scoring wingers, like his line mate Kyle Connor, or like Jake Gensel or any of those guys, it's typically 25 to 30%. If he's in that range, he's over a point per game player. And, on DraftKings, he's only 70 or 6,500. if he really starts producing on the power play like Blake Wheeler has in recent seasons, he's probably an $8,000 winger, right? So if Winnipeg plays as well as they can, or as well as they should, this is an $8,000 winger, and this is an underpriced line. The final note I'll make is that when Ehlers and Scheifele are together, or had been together over the previous 3 years, the expected goals scored went up by about 16%, which is very significant for one player change. And actual goals scored went up over 50%. It was absolutely bonkers how much having Ehlers on that line really, really helped out Winnipeg in their goal scoring, by extension, Mark Scheifele. The question is, of course, flowchart season, for those unaware, means if it looks to be a really good matchup for Winnipeg, and it is tonight, 3 and 4 for the Rangers, back-to-back, traveling, backup goalie in net. This is pretty good for Winnipeg. It just seems that they kind of falter in these situations. It's when they're in tough matchups that they really succeed. But I think for anybody playing tonight, the Winnipeg top line would be at the top of the list for projections, for ownership, for very good reason. Reasonable price, high projection, perfectly correlated even strength and power play. Ehlers and Connor are pretty much in the primes of their careers. Both really, really good goal scorers, both good shooters. Scheifele, obviously a great distributor. It's just a really good offensive line. The reason you wouldn't play them here tonight, especially if you're in a single lineup, single entry or 3 max or something like that, the reason is ownership. I think you could see them in 1/3 of lineups here tonight. That is exceptionally high, even for a short slate like this. Maybe a little bit more muted on FanDuel. They're a great play. There's no way around that. They're a really good play in a good matchup here tonight. It's just whether you want to take the risk of playing them with so many other people in. I think I might take the ownership savings and go over to Detroit one if I'm playing a single lineup here tonight. On the Rangers side, that second line has looked pretty good last night with Alexis Lafreniere there, and even the top line looked good with Capo Caco. Once again, we're not expecting a whole lot of ownership on the top line here. We have them at 6% on DraftKings, which of course is pretty low considering the slate. A bit higher, 17% on FanDuel. That's because the price is reasonable with Caco being so cheap. Two things. Winnipeg had a really bad penalty kill last year, and the Rangers typically have a very good power play. So if I'm stacking Rangers here tonight, you don't have to power play stack, but it's certainly an option. The problem is Connor Hellebuyck. Hellebuyck, I think, is one of the 4 or 5 best goalies in the world. And you do have to be worried about him single-handedly shutting down the Rangers here tonight. If I'm playing 20 lineups, 50 lineups, 150 lineups tonight, of course, I think I would get a couple Rangers top line or Rangers power play stacks in here. I think you're fine to do it in single entry as well if you want to be risky. But honestly, when I look at the ownership of Detroit one, and I look at the ownership of Rangers one, I'd probably just go to Detroit one here tonight. You know what I mean? So if I'm playing, I think I'm going single entry tonight, so I don't think I'll get to the Rangers. If you're playing like 20 max or something like that, I think I would definitely look into having a little bit of that top line in your mix. As far as the depth lines go, I'm not super excited here. Dubois, Wheeler, and Perfidi looks like they could be a good line. They're not getting much ownership on FanDuel. They're getting more on DraftKings. You get one guy in the top power play unit in Dubois. I think Perfidi could turn some heads here tonight. I'm wondering if this is the complete fall off season for Blake Wheeler. Like, he has struggled defensively, particularly. But now that he's off the top line, off the top power play unit, does he get a little bit exposed with his age and with his declining skills? I just think that there are other lines I would probably rather attack that are coming in with roughly the same ownership, like the new Tampa 1 line with Hagel coming in roughly the same ownership, as is, or at least they are over on DraftKings, as is the new Tampa 2 line. I think I would rather go with one of the Tampa lines, pay the difference, then drop down to Winnipeg 2. So Winnipeg 1 for me. Rangers, I do like the top line here for in this game, so I think it's about both top lines. For me, I think I'm avoiding the second lines in this one.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to be doing with Winnipeg top line here. Now, the flow chart, if Blake Wheeler was there, is a fade. Now, do we have data on the flow chart without? Not yet. So we're going to find out tonight. The thing is, like, yeah, 30% ownership, but man, they are underpriced compared to what they could be. Like Kyle Connor was in the mid 8s at times last year. Ehlers, like you mentioned, if he gets off to a hot start, will be in the mid 7s. Scheifele saw 7,000. Like this potentially could be a 21, 22K line if they're doing what they're supposed to do. You're getting the heavy discount there. You're not getting the ownership discount here. I don't know what I'm going to do in single entry. In MME, 150 max, I think you got to take a stand here. Like I like taking a stand in MME on short slates on these teams. You either go way under or way over. Yeah, you can go with the field. I just feel like you're putting yourself at a disadvantage if you do that. So I think you kind of got to take a stand. On the Rangers side, I like that second line, but man, they're going to be a little bit over-owned. I think you can power play stack, or you can one-off like a Trocheck or a Chris Kreider or something like that. But I don't think I'm going to full stack anything on the Rangers. If you do need a cheap one-off, I think Alexis Lafreniere has looked really good to start the season, especially now that he's playing with Panarin. I think he is fine. On the blue line, I should just, hit my play button because I'm going to just repeat myself. Adam Fox, if you're using power play, Jacob Trouba, if you want to one-off, Keandre Miller, nice punt. Like Keandre Miller has looked very, very good to start this season. He is still very, very cheap. If he starts producing more offense, he is going to be priced a little bit lower than Jacob Trouba. So I like getting in on Keandre Miller before his price starts going up. I can't stand that Josh Morrissey's on the top power play. I wish it was Neil Pionk, but Morrissey 4,800 on the top power play is fine. You want to use Neil Pionk kind of like a Jacob Trouba stat stuffer. I think that's fine if you want to punt, especially if you're using a Hellebuck. I think Brendan Dillon or Dylan DeMello are fine.
Yeah, I do like Keandre Miller as long as he stays under like 3,500 on DraftKings. I think he's in play on most games. Brendan Dillon might get some reasonable ice time for Winnipeg. He grades out as a pretty decent punt, at least over on DraftKings for us. So that's the way I would go. I agree with you. I don't think you need to use Morrissey in your Winnipeg power play stacks. Obviously, if you're playing a lot of lineups, you will have some Morrissey, but he's definitely not a must in single entry.
Yep. So let's move on to the last game of the night. We have the Carolina Hurricanes with a 3.4 total heading into San Jose. The Sharks have a 2.6 total. News here, Timo Meier expected to play. If you like to park your car on Narrative Street, this may be the biggest narrative of the early hockey season. Brent Burns back in San Jose as the Carolina power play quarterback. Now, Carolina won, let a lot of us down on opening night, myself included. They are not getting a lot of ownership here, maybe because Aho is overpriced or maybe they didn't play too well. I suspect they're going to be higher than the 4% that they are right now. They may hit double digits. We'll have to wait and see. Sharks aren't a very good defensive team. Sharks, on the other hand, getting heavy ownership on that top line. But with Luke Cunnin not on the top power play unit anymore, Kevin LeBanc moving to that top power play unit, I think there is another line on that team that I like better, and they're getting much lower ownership. What are you thinking for this game?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised when I was looking through our top stacks tool on the Carolina ownership. The top line, at least, fairly muted. We have expected on DraftKings, definitely in the single digits. Same over on FanDuel. I think it kind of makes sense in a way because you have the Tampa top line, you have the Winnipeg top line, Detroit top line, Rangers top line, all in the same price range. And at least on DraftKings, you can't play those two lines plus your goalie and then fit anything more than a couple punt defensemen. So I'm not sure Carolina ends up at Carolina top line is 5%, but I think you could definitely see them at 8-9%, something like that, which on a short slate is fine. I think we saw the problem with the Carolina top line in their last game and using them in DFS, and it's an ice time problem, right? We mentioned it in the show where we were covering Carolina. I think it was Wednesday. The days all blur together. Sebastian Aho was the only forward over 18 minutes. I think they only had 2 other guys over 17 minutes. One of them being Seth Jarvis, who was on his line, but Teuvo Teravainen was at like 15 minutes or something like that. Carolina really does like to spread out the ice time among their forwards, and that's kind of the issue with stacking them, is that you're not going to get those 22, 23-minute games like we were talking about with Tampa Bay earlier in the show. So if you're not going to play a ton of minutes, I'll probably just drop down to the second line. And I did write up that second line a little bit in the Power Plays article. Martin Necas, I thought, looked like Carolina's best player in the first game. He had a tough year last year, but he still had a lot of good underlying stats, things like zone entries, shot assists, which are passes leading to teammate shots and things like that. And he's playing with Andrei Svechnikov, who's one of the top young goal scorers in hockey. So I really do like that Carolina second line going into the San Jose second line. You get away from the Hurdle-Meyer combination. I think the San Jose second line should be a little bit better this year than it was last year. Kevin Labanc healthy, but Steven Lorentz is really an unknown quantity. Logan Couture's defensive skills are starting to slide now that he's 31 or 32 years old. So I do like Carolina too, kind of as kind of like a fillery stack here, especially where Necas played as many minutes as Jarvis did. Kotkaniemi played as many minutes as Teravainen did. And I think you're going to see a lot of games like that from Carolina this season. Kotkaniemi and Necas over their last 215 minutes together, 2.9 expected goals generated per 60 minutes. That's pretty good. And then you add Andrei Svechnikov to that mix. I think you're going to see them be even better. So I do like Carolina too, as a fillery type stack here tonight, going into the second and third lines from San Jose. On the San Jose side, yeah, you're right. That top line ownership is just bananas. You get 2 to 3 guys on the power play. Meyer's just a shot machine. Plays well with Hurdle, top power play and all that. But like we mentioned in the show with Carolina, Carolina has had one of the best penalty kills in NHL history last season. And I see that repeating again this season. So I don't want to rely on power play correlation for playing a line against the Carolina Hurricanes. It's one of the teams where I just won't do that. So I think it's probably this 2 second lines that I like best in this game. Labanc will get top power play minutes for for whatever that's worth. For as good as they were offensively, Carolina's second line was offensively last year. They did give up a fair amount of goals defensively, 2.8 expected goals against, which is really high, considerably worse than average. I think average is about 2.4. So I think you could see a lot of chances traded between those second lines when they face off against each other. So this is probably the game where I'm going to leave the top lines alone and drop down to the second lines. I don't have problem playing the top lines. Don't get me wrong, especially with Carolina top line having such good leverage. I just think this is the game where I'm going to look for my filler type stacks.
Yeah, and we talked about how it's so hard to find these guys on DraftKings under 3K on the top power play. There's 3 of them tonight. Sean Monahan, Justin Danforth, Kevin Labanc. And I think Kevin Labanc is my favorite. Now, it's the worst power play matchup on the slate, and he is softer than Sharman Ultra Soft. But at that price, shooting pucks, he does have a good shot of hitting that shot bonus. Brett Burns, 6,300. His price has gone up. He had 6 shots on goal, had 5 other attempts blocked. If Carolina scores on the power play, I think he's going to be involved. I think he's fine at the price. I just don't know what I'm going to do with him yet. Maybe I'll just let my bets ride and look elsewhere in DFS. I think Slavin is a Jacob Trouba type one-off here. Brady Shea, a little bit too expensive. Brett Pesce at 4,400 is someone else I would look at. On the Sharks side, there just isn't anything that I really like. If you want to, for power play stuff, use Carlson. I guess that's fine, but I'd much rather use a Trouba than Carlson tonight. Mario Ferraro is way too expensive for me. He does not shoot the puck, 4,900. So I'm probably just going to look elsewhere for defensemen tonight.
Yeah, I will say Jacob Slavin's price on FanDuel 4,600 is really, really good. He grades out as one of our best defense values, regardless of price, over on FanDuel tonight. So I don't mind Slavin over on FD, over on DK. I agree with you. Maybe if you want to correlate, if you're playing Carolina 2, correlate with Brett Pesce or something like that. But I don't think this is the game where I'm going to be looking for my defenseman. And maybe Erik Karlsson has to play a ton of minutes because they're not very deep. But I agree. I'm looking elsewhere for my D-man.
Coming up after us at 3:30, we have the No House Advantage show with A10 and Jeff. And just a reminder, this is the last day for our 7 for 7 promo code PowerPlay. Take advantage of it. It'll give you a week, even if you just want to try out the tools. Take them for a spin, take them for a ride, whatever weird, quip you want to say. Promo code PowerPlay. Click the link in the description. Now let's get to our hat trick picks and goalies. Goalies kind of interesting tonight. There really isn't, I don't know. You can use James Reimer, I guess, at 7,600, but I much prefer Freddie Anderson in that game. Halak is unknown at this point. Connor Hellebuck obviously stands out, but I worry about the penalty kill. I think Ville Husso at 7,800 is going to be popular, but I think Montreal is good offensively, and Detroit still has questions defensively. Vasilevsky is obviously the safe option, and Tarasov would be the guy to get, the cheap option. But the problem with Tarasov is the Lightning don't shoot the puck a lot, so it's very possible he sees less than 30 shots on goal. So I think my favorite goalies tonight are expensive in Freddie Anderson and Ville Husso.
Yeah, I do like Husso. He probably will be fairly owned, but he's one of the goalies I have. I also did write up James Reimer. I think if San Jose wins that game, it's not because they blew out Carolina 6-5 or something like that. I think it's because Reimer puts up a very good game. So he might be the cheap goalie that I look towards, especially over on FanDuel, where I think he's only 6,800. On DK, I do like Husso quite a bit here tonight. And I guess maybe Halak would have leverage over that Winnipeg top and second line ownership. I don't know if you want to build like that, but he's only 7,800. But I do like Husso the best on DraftKings.
Yeah, Halak's kind of a risky proposition, which may end up being good for GPPs. He's probably not going to be very high owned, and he does have some upside in a victory. I'm going to go for my hat trick pick, a new face in a new place. I'm going David Perron.
Oh, I'm going with the same team. I got our buddy Jakub Vrana. Hopefully he starts the season in a big way. Maybe he doesn't get enough ice time to do it, but I believe in his new line mates. So Jakub Vrana, my hat trick pick.
Yeah, and new coach who was the John Cooper's assistant in Tampa Bay, much better coach than Jeff Blashill. Not bashing Blashill's hockey knowledge, but I am bashing his X's and O's. Anyway, promo code PowerPlay. We got to get out of here. Eitan and Jeff are coming up after us. No House Advantage. We will be back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. I couldn't find the flavor of Bang that I liked, so I have a new energy drink we're going to try out. So join us bright and early, 9 a.m. tomorrow for Slim Cliffy. I'm the big dog, Josh Harris. This is the little guy you heard make some quips. This is my son, Avery. He's saying hi to his cousin. Shout out 97.5 PST or whatever. But we'll catch you tomorrow. Good luck, everybody.
Good luck, everyone.